are other banks that do things like this, similar things, right? But what really, what separates us is our generosity. So each year we pledged that we are going to give 10% of our profits back to faith-based ministries and organizations that do meaningful work. So the goal is to make generosity consistent, sustainable, and woven into our normal financial life, not something separate or occasional. It's kind of speaking to what you were speaking to earlier. We're putting this out there because we want to make it a part of day-to-day life.
Welcome back to the Stewardship Leader Podcast. I'm your host, Leo Sabo, and this podcast exists to equip pastors, stewardship leaders, and ministry teams who are helping people follow Jesus as it relates to their finances. One of the things we talk about often at the Christian Stewardship Network is that financial discipleship doesn't stop at budgeting or generosity sermons. It shows up in everyday decisions, how we save, how we spend, how we give, and even how we bank. Today's conversation fits squarely in that space. I'm joined by Ray Feliciano from 316 Financial, one of CSN's trusted partners. We're going to talk about not only about what 316 does, but why it exists and how it serves churches, how they serve ministries and individuals who want to better align faith and finances. Ray, welcome to the Stewardship Leader Podcast.
Thank you, Leo. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, before we jump into 316 Financial, can you share a bit about your background and how you ended up doing this kind of work?
Yeah, of course. I come from a banking background, and I've got extensive experience lending to churches. A significant part of my career has been working alongside churches to help them navigate financing decisions responsibly. So that experience really positioned me well to be a part of 316. Additionally, I've served as an officer in the United States military. I've done that for about 20 years, and that shaped my leadership style, discipline, and commitment to service.
How did your years working with churches shape the way you think about stewardship ministry?
So I've seen what stewardship entails. It's not just generosity or sermons on finances. It's managing resources wisely. It involves like strategic level thinking for budgets, planning, accountability, and like long-term stability or sustainability. So you can really see how a stewardship becomes a communal, not just individual.
Mm-hmm.
So in commercial banking, we that's mostly about generating growth and generating profit, but church lending is different. So when a church borrows, it borrows to build, and you can see that money is just a tool to serve that mission.
Yeah, it's also very spiritual, right? We're managing God's resources, and so that makes so much sense. So you're here to talk about 316 Financial, which I'm excited to dig into. Tell me about it, and why was it created in the first place?
Sure thing. So 316 Financial, it was created from our CEO, Dennis Zember. He noticed a troubling disconnect. So he found that while Christians own trillions of the wealth in this country, he also noticed that tithing and charitable giving was at a historic low. So rather than seeing that as simply a fundraising issue, Dennis viewed it as a discipleship and stewardship issue. People are deeply intentional about aligning the values that they have in many areas, what they watch on TV, who they spend their time with, even what church they go to. And we just thought banking being a pervasive element in society, it's one of the most formative and frequent decisions people make, is often completely disconnected from those same values.
Yeah.
So, that led to a pretty compelling question. If we choose so many aspects of our lives based on what we believe, why shouldn't banking be the same? 316 was created as a way to help bridge the gap between faith and finance by integrating that stewardship and generosity into something people already do every day.
Yeah, I love that because so often we have certain areas of our life and things we do that are part of our life, and we do it every day. Many times there are things that we just don't automatically associate, like this is part of my life, and I don't become a non-believer or don't apply my faith to this. I do every day. If I'm not cognizant of it, I may actually think of it as something less than spiritual. And yet the decision we make with our money from a stewardship perspective, especially from a generosity perspective, is so close to our walk with Christ. It's so close to who we are as believers, right? If we integrate, that's what we try to do, is to integrate our faith with our finances and everything we do. So it makes sense. And I love that 316 Financial and people like you, God has called to make that connection for us because we don't naturally make that connection. And in the world, we kind of think banking is like, oh, it's corrupt and they charge too many fees. And so we kind of look at it almost like with suspicion. But what you're saying is like, no, this is a stewardship issue and banking is part of our life. And we should not discount the spiritual impact that it can have on our life. So I love that. When Dennis first started talking about this, did people understand it right away, or did it take time for the vision to finally click?
So that's a great question. And no, not at all. This is so atypical for a bank that many thought it wasn't even possible to combine the two. So, however, we thought we worked out a way that is mutually beneficial for the bank, for faith based organizations and for the community. Once we laid out the vision and it began to take shape, the excitement really became palpable. People started to gravitate towards it really quick.
Perfect. Well, what does 316 Financial actually do, and what do you guys offer?
So, as a division of Premise Bank, 316 Financial, it's a national digital bank. It offers modern competitive banking products. So, it's checking, it's savings. It offers personal loans. We do home and business loans. We do mortgage loans. We offer these products with very little fees and very competitive interest rates. What differentiates us from the commitment, because there are other banks that do things like this, similar things, right? But what really what separates us is our generosity. So, each year we pledged that we are going to give 10% of our profits back to faith-based industry or back to faith-based ministries and organizations that do meaningful work. So, the goal is to make generosity consistent, sustainable, and woven into our normal financial life. Not something separate or occasional. It's kind of speaking to what you were speaking to earlier. We're putting this out there because we want to make it a part of day-to-day life.
Yeah. I love that. I don't know many banks that do that. I've been part of a credit union because I used to have a job where the credit union was just part of it came with it kind of thing. And so I've been in that credit union for years. And because it is owned, as you know, a credit union is owned by its members, so to speak. So
Mhm.
there's a dividend that comes in. And I just got a letter the other day saying that like $12 million was given back to the members. And that's generous. And I appreciate that. But it's just part of how they operate, right?
Mhm.
This is uniquely different because it's saying part of our profit, since we are a private organization, we don't belong to the members, we're not a co op, that kind of way. We are making a conscious decision to give 10% of the profit. So you mentioned the giving 10%. Why make that a structural commitment instead of something optional year to year? Because, I mean, you're making a commitment to give. It's on your website, it's something you
Mhm.
decided to do. So tell me about that.
Yeah, well, we wanted to make a commitment that was enduring,
Mm.
and something that left no ambiguity that we were committed to this cause. So to do that, it can't be optional. It's got to be priority. Burn the bridge behind you. Okay, we made the promise we were going to do it because we believe in this, and so we did not want to make it something that was could slide in one direction or another. We are going to do it, and that's bottom line.
I love that. I mean, just shows your commitment that we're not here for profit, and we'll change whatever we have to change to make profit. Profit is good. I'm all for profit. I think profit is something God desires as well, but it's not profit above all.
Mhm.
And putting that stake in the ground says something about both the motivation of the founder, but also the people that then attach to that vision and become employees of that organization and serve these churches and individuals. So love that. So let's get into who does 316 Financial serve and who have you worked with.
Sure thing. So individuals, churches, nonprofits, Christian-led organizations. Much of our work has been alongside churches, stewardship networks, faith-based partners. These are folks who are already thinking deeply about generosity and discipleship. Rather than positioning ourselves as the answer, we see 316 as a tool that churches and leaders can point to, as well as a resource nonprofits and faith-minded individuals can lean into to reinforce values that they're already living and teaching on a day-to-day basis. We just think it's a practical way to connect belief and behavior in everyday financial decisions.
Agreed. So, why is it important for you to emphasize that you guys are a tool, not the solution? Can you dig into that a little bit?
It is extremely important, right? Because it's the premise that we're setting. That's what we're trying to get out there. In this instance, we're using banking to tie faith and finances, but we're realistic, right? So, as good an idea as it is, we're not going to be able to solve all the church's financing needs. However, we're demonstrating that there's still a lot of creative ways out there to help bridge that gap. 316 is just one of those tools.
Now, coming back to the topic of discipleship, which is what our mission here at CSN is really about, is helping churches disciple their people well, especially when it comes to the area of finances and stewarding the things that God has entrusted to us. So, how have churches responded when they realize banking can be part of the discipleship?
Yeah, it's an interesting response, actually. Enthusiastically, yet cautious.
Okay.
So, money's often considered a very personal thing, and this concept is new. The leadership, Faith-based leadership is they already have a lot of asks. They're already dealing with this a lot. After we kind of walk through it, right, they get much more excited after it's been socialized and after it's been kind of normalized with the congregation. It takes a couple conversations with them to fully understand what we're trying to do and what we're bringing to the table. So that's the reason why we're pushing for widest dissemination. We're pushing for the maximum exposure because the more you understand about it, the more you get comfortable with it. You see it's basically just aligning something you already do day to day with what you truly believe in your heart.
Yeah, that's great. It just reinforces the fact that you are there to help churches do what churches are supposed to do, and
Mhm.
that's to help them help the people be discipled and use the resources so that they are living out like their faith in Christ. And I think that's what really drew me to your organization, um, is that you can take something like banking and think, well, it's just banking. Like it's really just it's a logical decision more than anything. It's a math decision. Like how much is it going to cost us? Is the process simpler? Do they have the tools that we need? And if you make that decision based on that alone, it's not a bad decision. Those things are important. But when you think about it deeper and you think, well, yes, but does this organization and are they aware of the challenges a church is facing? Are they aware of a nonprofit who's trying to operate and doesn't believe in taking on debt and presuming on the future, but yet lending could take them to the next level in the mission that God has given them? So
Mhm.
having that heart of, "Hey, we know what you're about, we understand what you do, we're going to work with you. We're not going to give you a product that eventually it's going to kill your ministry or hurt you or put you on a hook and not be able to move forward. We're actually going to think and process through this with you so that as you're making that decision, you feel confident that this is a good decision, that you've taken into account the discipleship factor. You've taken into account that what you're doing is not a risk in itself, that it's actually a very conscious decision that you're being led by people who understand ministry and are doing it with the right heart, the right reason, not simply for profit. And that is banking doing different. I tell you, I don't experience that at my bank. Again, I like my bank, but I just never looked at them for that, which is kind of an interesting to think about because I've been in stewardship for over 20 years. But it is part of how I manage what God has entrusted to me.
Mm.
So I love the mission that 316 Financial has, that it's focused on ministry and the
Well, I feel
commitment
like
to
we should
give.
hire you, Leo. I don't know if I don't know
I
if
could be
I've
a
ever been
spokesman.
able yeah, I don't know if I've ever been able to articulate it so eloquently.
Well, again, this is my world, so this is where I think about things all the time. But I'm seeing the connection that I hadn't seen before, and so I appreciate your organization even more so as you communicated the heart behind it. So you mentioned about giving back. We talked about the 10% that you guys commit to organization and ministry. So do you have an example you could share with our audience? I think they would love to hear some impact that you guys have had in this way.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I'd like to just highlight 2 quick examples, if you wouldn't mind. One is our Jimmy Hale mission. So that's based out of Birmingham, Alabama, and they serve individuals and families experiencing homelessness, experiencing addiction and crisis, and they provide residential recovery programs as well as housing assistance and compassionate care. So they've got a true holistic approach on restoration, stability, and long-term transformation. So just a tremendous organization that we're so proud to be helping. And another one is our Fathers in the Field. Now, that's dedicated to strengthening fathers and families
Mm,
through mentorship, discipleship, and community engagement. Look, by equipping men to lead their families with integrity and purpose, the organization works to foster generational change. I mean, this is something that will last beyond them,
yeah.
hopefully beyond their children and to their children. And so that is a really just awesome organization that again we are just beside ourselves that we're able to help with. So we're very very excited to have um, those 2 organizations be our grant recipients for 2025.
Yeah, wow. That's the second one, especially. I think both of them are awesome. And I know
Yeah.
you have other examples, but especially the one that is focusing on and creating strong fathers and husbands,
Yep. Yeah.
men that
It's
can
not
lead their
something.
families.
Yeah. It's not something we find. It's not something that's talked about quite often or quite frequently in today's society. There's so many
Well,
other things.
yeah, not only that, but as we all know, manliness is under attack, unfortunately, which is
100%.
kind of mind boggling to me because it's not good for our society. But yeah, I mean, obviously the enemy is at work and he's trying to do his best to damage what God has created, and the family is God's idea, and He's structured in such a way that it could thrive. And of course, culture is against that, and the enemy is against that, and therefore, he's doing his best to try to influence that in a negative way. So I love that you guys are partnering up with an organization like that to push back on this, because literally, I feel like like we've been on the offense when it comes to that, to trying to keep the family together. And so, yeah, I couldn't think of a better cause. I'm sure there are, but this one is definitely near and dear to my heart. I think it's something that we need to fight for. So, on a more of personal level for you, Ray, what does it mean for you to personally see banking profits directly fuel this kind of ministry impact?
It's really exciting. It really is. I mean, I can't wait to see the impact that this has in the future. You get so closely engaged with each organization, you just can't help but be personally invested. So, you really see the difference it makes. You can see it in the eyes of the people. This is something where we know a lot of these individuals who are involved in these organizations. We know a lot of the individuals who these organizations help. So it's great to see it take shape, take form, and it's great to see what it does for the community. So it is a very gratifying feeling.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. I could definitely see that in you as you're talking about it. That's what wakes us up in the morning, right? That there's a bigger mission than just, hey, I can go earn another paycheck and get through another month. No, life is so much more than that, and we get to enjoy it when we do something that matters. And seeing that impact is what I'm really seeing in your face, in your eyes as you're speaking. So I love that.
Helping Hands Ministries empowers families to give with purpose and wisdom. They offer donor-advised funds, legacy planning, and generosity tools, all rooted in biblical stewardship. Whether you're looking to simplify your giving or make a lasting kingdom impact, Helping Hands can guide you every step of the way. Learn more at hhmin.org.
Now, let's get a little bit more practical. Thank you so much for being willing to go on a personal level, because I think that's important to our audience. Let's talk about church lending. I know that you guys do business loans, but I assume that you also do church loans. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so over the years, we've done hundreds of church loans. We've done them for real estate acquisitions. We've done it for expansion. We've done it for renovations. We've also done term loans for equipment, things like sound systems or vehicles.
Hmm, okay.
In addition, we've done lines of credit for things like working capital to cover unexpected expenses. So, everyone has those. You have those at your house. You have those, with your family. Churches have them, right?
Mhm.
So, we need to find a way to help them out with that, especially when it's unexpected.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. One of the things that I'm aware of here at CSN, some of our community are folks in the church world, meaning they're on staff at a church, and sometimes they wear multiple hats. One of them is to be the financial administrative person. So they're managing the
Mhm.
finances of the church, whether it's accounting, giving records, all of that. And so we have a significant percentage of our audience that is in that niche of the church and serving in those roles. And this is more for them because I want them to understand how you guys do what you do. This is probably more on their desk to try to figure out the nuts and bolts of it. So I'd like to go there with the church lending side and what that looks like. So, what's the biggest misconception that churches have about borrowing when they're working with banks? What are some of the things that you kind of know that are going to happen? And maybe it's a misconception, and how do you address it?
So you kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier when we were talking about making sure that when we are lending, we're lending very safely because obviously it's about sustainability, right? It's frankly it's about community sustainability because it just doesn't impact the bank or the church; it impacts all the people in the community. So one of the common misconceptions that we see a lot of times is with a church that at a certain point in time they can handle a certain level of debt, and because of that certain point of time, they figure that they can kind of commit to a long-term debt at that level. And, a lot of times we find that they're putting a substantial reliance on just a few members of their congregation who have significant financial means.
I can see that.
And if that individual or that group of individuals, if they experience some type of adverse life events or some material change in the economy, they may not be able to provide the same level of support that they had previously. And this is why it's always prudent to ensure that, the debt is appropriate, that it's equally spread across a large segment to minimize any impact that could come from the loss or change in the financial position of one or two members.
Yeah, yeah, that's wise. I mean, it's exactly what I would want a bank to talk to me about. Look at the numbers. Don't I know
Mhm,
what I want? I
mhm.
know what my vision is. I know what God's told me. But realistically, I need that a kind of advice, that kind of wisdom to make a good decision. And obviously, that's part of the banking lending responsibility. But I think it goes more than that with a ministry because understanding that it's a ministry, that it's a church that depends on sometimes a few people to make it work.
Mhm.
Yeah, especially in a long term situation, that could go wrong. And you would hate to see a church close its doors simply because of a financial decision that just stretched them further than they should have gone because the bank didn't care. They just, hey, you need a loan. looks like the numbers work. Let's do it. But
Correct.
if you take the longer approach, I think it's wise. So thank you for that. I think that's an important part of doing it. So what advice would you give churches then for preparing to approach for a loan with you guys?
No, so several things, right? So first and foremost, I would say, cultivate a relationship with a lender early on. Really, really should. Have a conversation before the need arises. Introduce the lender to the organization. Bring them in. They can talk to your board. I give an example. We had a church approach us, and they owned the property that they were in, but they were busting at the seams. They were very successful. They were growing. They had a lot that was just adjacent to them, and so they came in and they said, "Hey, look, we would like to eventually build on this lot. But so we want to have a conversation and we want to start to understand what it would take to get the lending to go through the process." I worked with them for about 3 years to go through the entire process, to painstakingly walk through the capital stack of what the requirement would be on the church's side and on the bank side. And then all sorts of relationships actually came out from that because they were looking for recommendations for architects and who to talk to at the county. I mean, there were all sorts of ways that I was able to connect them with the people they needed to talk to in order to get to the place where they can get a shovel in the ground and then start building. So eventually, like I said, after 3 years of back and forth going and seeing their finance board, talking to them about a building fund, working through the pro forma. After all that, we were able to get the construction loan done. They were able to build the church. And even after that, they had to sell their other church. So they were talking to another organization to do that. And they brought them to us and said, "This organization helped us get to where we are right now. You might want to at least have a conversation with them." And we were able to get two relationships out of that rather than just the one. So
Yeah.
it was mutually beneficial.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I love the stewarding of that relationship for 3 years to get them to that place. That just says so much about your commitment to making sure that churches are walking healthy through this process. So, based on your experience, obviously, what distinguishes churches that navigate lending well from those that struggle?
Oh, it's preparation. It kind of goes right back to the previous question. It really is preparation. So as I mentioned earlier, cultivating a relationship early on with the lender, knowing what the requirements are, because a lot of times there's going to be financial requirements. The budget versus actual, the financial statements that are needed, what a pro forma potentially might look like, and also getting that guidance from the lender, because perhaps there's a capital campaign that's involved, right? And if you're doing a capital campaign, there might be pledge cards, there's going to be obligations that are made. If you get that lender involved, you have that conversation with them, there are a lot of ways that you can just arrive at creative solutions to issues that may possibly arise, or to things that you might want to do in certain timelines. I have another example of a church that wanted to build a sanctuary, and they wanted to build it during a certain time because material costs were low, labor costs were low, and interest rates were low. And they had the foresight to know that it won't be like this forever. So they put together this capital campaign, and we were working with them for probably about a year or so. And they said, "Hey, look, we've got these promises, we've got this capital campaign, we have these pledges, but they go out 18 months. They can't just deliver everything right now. They go out 18 months." Well, we were able to come up with a creative solution where we could monetize those pledges and use them as collateral and use them as equity into the project. So we were able to fund more of the project for them so that they could get the sanctuary built in the time they wanted to get it built. And as the pledges came in, they came in and added to the equity into their project and reduced the loan balance for them. So when all the dust settled, they had the new sanctuary, they were able to get in there. And like I said, it worked out perfectly for everybody. So another really successful one. And again, they are still clients of the bank to this day. We absolutely have a tremendous relationship with them.
That's awesome. Love that. Love that. I mean, it just speaks so much of the value that you bring to churches in those situations. So, yeah, that's great. All right. So I've enjoyed this thoroughly so far. Feel like I've learned so much more about banking that I didn't know, especially from your perspective. So thanks for that. As we wrap up, what's one encouragement you'd offer pastors or stewardship leaders who want to really help their people better align their faith and finances?
Yeah, I'd say don't be afraid to talk about finances as a discipleship, not just a budgeting issue. So, frame like financial stewardship as less pressure and more about purpose. The money's about serving the mission. And that's something every member can be part of and could feel good about. So if you just frame it properly and you start having conversations, then I think everybody gets more comfortable with it quicker. So that personally would be my recommendation. Is just lean into that. And I think it would help things move along.
Yeah, it's simple, but so powerful because if we talk about it, we can find out where we understand things, where we can learn things, where we can adapt and grow. And that's perfect. Thank you. Thank you for that. Well, Ray, thank you for sharing your story and the heart behind 316 Financial. This conversation is really a great reminder that stewardship isn't just about occasional generosity moments, it's about faithful decisions made consistently over time. I think you said that so well. Again, thank you for taking the time to share that with us and really help us understand 316 Financial, the heart behind it, and what you guys do so well.
Elliot, it was great to be on. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been awesome.
Yeah,
Seriously,
my
we
pleasure.
appreciate it.
Well, to our listeners, 316 Financial is a valued partner of Christian Stewardship Network, and we'll include some links in the show notes so that you can learn more about them and hopefully connect with them. And if you're a stewardship pastor or leader, we would love to introduce you to some of the training and resources and a community of leaders committed to biblical stewardship. That's our Christian Stewardship Network. We'd love to invite you to become a CSN member. We have a membership that will help you to get into a community of people that will help you to grow your stewardship and generosity ministry. I'd also love to personally invite you to join us at our annual forum in Nashville, Tennessee. It's coming up in just a few weeks. It's March 2nd to the 4th. And this is where stewardship leaders gather to sharpen their vision, to deepen their impact, and embrace the next era of generosity. It's on the cutting edge, it's changing all the time. This is what we keep up with, and this is what we try to help our network of leaders to understand so that they can navigate that area more confidently and more biblically. So come join us. We'd love to see you there. Thank you again for listening. We'll see you next time on Stewardship Leader.